Hey, welcome back to Evil's Comics. I'm Evil Mike, and I have a review for you. This is going to be Sandman, Master of Dreams, issue number 1. This is the facsimile edition that I'm holding. For me, I've been waiting a long time to read this. Yes, I could have bought, omnis, trades, stuff like that. I'm kind of a, if I can find it, I'd rather read the single issues and stuff. Now that we have the Sandman Netflix show that has come out, I'm a huge fan of it. I loved it. Some of the best TV I've seen this year. A little biased. I love DC also, but still I judge and grade stuff regardless without the bias. I'm just a huge comic lover though, but I've always been interested in the Sandman. It always sounded interesting, but I never really had any idea. Around my 20s, I want to say, after the Keanu Reeves Constantine movie came out, I got into Hellblazer. I started reading that side, and then Lucifer the show. I started reading Lucifer, knowing that they somehow tied into the main scheme of the universe that DC, kind of portrays. But let's get into it. So this is a facsimile, which is a reprint. The difference between a facsimile and a reprint is the facsimiles look authentic to, the original, comic and everything. You'll find, real ads that they printed, the real articles unaltered, stuff like that. As far as I could tell, there wasn't anything unaltered at all. Let's get into the who's and how's. It was actually dropped in 1989, the original issue. Neil Gaiman, of course, is on the story. Sam Keith, one of my favorite artists, is doing the art with Mike. I know I'm going to mispronounce this. Dringenberg, and then we got Todd Klein on letters and Robbie Busch on colors. I'm pretty sure I mispronounced those names. I apologize if I did. So let's get into it. It starts off right off the bat. We have, and I think he's supposed to be one of the museum curators, and he's stopping off at the Magus's house. We learned that this is like an occult house. That it's in England. It's supposed to take place in 1916 at Witchcross, England, and basically this curator is bringing this book back to I forget his name. I think it is Burgess. I am bad with name, guys. I apologize. But I think it is Roderick Burgess, and he's bringing the book back, and he's telling him he's reconsidered, and basically that his son had died. The Magus, Robert Burgess, tells him, that he has this plan lined up to capture death, and in this plan, that they're gonna keep death hostage unless death brings back the people they want that they lost. It seems like the Magus, I'm just going to keep calling him that, Robert Burgess, but the Magus had lost a son. He still has another son that is there with him, but that's who he's trying to get back. He convinced the curator because recently his son died in I think World War I it would be. But as the story goes, they kind of show you some other characters. They show you it's I think 5 different characters. It's somebody that's going through World War I. It's kind of one of the main ones is this girl. It's but we'll get there later on because they just kind of touch base with him. Then they go off into what the Magus has planned now that he has this grimoire, the book that the curator brought him, and basically it's going to be the spell. And again, the Magus thinks he's trying to capture death, the essence and entity of death, the physical being of death. He does this whole magical spell and stuff, and sure enough, he does manage to conjure somebody. It is not Death, it is Death's younger brother, and as we find out, it is the Sandman, Morpheus. And he shows up in all his attire and stuff. He basically gets blasted on the ground. He is trapped in the circle that was held, for the ritual and stuff. I love the art, man. Sam Keith. I can see why people fell in love with this book, but the coloring, the art, it's fantastic. But we see right off the bat that the Magus grabs everything that the Sandman comes with, which is a jewel, the helmet, and his bag of sand. After that, basically, the Sandman is left there naked. They do show that when this happens, those couple of people that they focused on in the beginning, and I think one of the persons is Enette or Onetta or something like that, again, bad with names. But basically, that because he has captured Dream, that now Dream has stopped doing what he's supposed to be doing. So basically, people are falling asleep, and they're falling into this endless sleep, the sleep that they never wake up for. Well, currently, they also show you that, like, people that are having dreams, like their dreams kind of just fade away as they're in there, and they have this guy who's dreaming about clouds, and he kind of, like, it causes him to be constantly awake instead of being able to go to sleep. So some people have it where they never, wake up. Some people have it where they never are able to fall asleep. That's kind of why they touch base on the 5 different people in the beginning of the story. Like I said, very old ads. This is like an original ad for Looney Tunes merchandise sold by Warner Brothers. And it actually says one of the first generic ads from Warner Brothers. There is a little more explanation from Roger Burgess, as talking about as long as Morpheus is in this circle that was within the spell, he is captured. He kind of gives him the whole, like, hostage. Hey, if you give me these things, power, limitless life, immortality, stuff like that, I'll let you go. Sandman just sits there in solitude and quiet, and they do show that this one scene where the curator is, like sometime later, and he's had different thoughts, and because Magus has not been able to produce his dead son, he's having second thoughts, and now he's even going to commit suicide. And in his suicide letter, he's trying to incriminate Magus and stuff, and we see that Magus uses some of the Sandman's tools to prevent that suicide letter from ever coming to light. The book kind of goes over some other things. It quickly jumps throughout the years, but it does show some other things quickly about how Onetta, I think her name is Onetta, but she falls asleep, but it does show, it shows that the curator, like, he actually commit suicide. The letter is never found. There is some, like, murder mystery, like, investigation stuff that goes on with the Burgess family, but technically nothing's ever, like, linked to him or whatever. They start going into his son, because when the Magus' son started this out, I want to say he was like 8 or 10, and at one point he starts getting old enough where he's like 16 or whatever, and they do show this, that he's the one who finally figures out who Dream is, that it's not Death or anything like that he's one of the Endless, and that it's Death's younger brother, and he actually finds a book that where it kind of names Dream. And they do show you that eventually Magus does take a mistress, and eventually he has, like, a personal assistant and is, like, at his house, and eventually that assistant and his mistress, eventually they run away, and they take all of the Sandman's tools, the jewel, the helmet, and the sand, and they take off, never to be seen again. They do show that the Magus tries to do all this, like, these rituals to find, both people and kill them and stuff, but, like, it does show right here that eventually the assistant that left the Magus, he trades the helmet to a demon to, acquire this jewel, that grants him protection over anything. So it like, while he has that jewel, the Magus can't harm him or whatever. But we do see eventually the mistress leaves that dude and takes his jewel with him, and as soon as that happens, we see that the assistant, that the Magus is eventually able to do a ritual that just kills him. It explodes him. They do show a couple other things, that one of those guys that is being caused to live in the waking, where he can't go to sleep. He is the, like, World War I veteran. He eventually kills himself. They do show that one of the ladies, she wakes every now and then, I think 4 or 5 times a year, but for the rest of the year she sleeps. And then they show Netta, who's still asleep during this whole thing. They do show that around when she was like 25 or something like that, because the years are spreading forward, that she was raped, and the baby was like sold to a couple or something like that, and it was like hushed over the hospital and covered up kind of thing. During this time when Etta is still asleep, she doesn't know any of this, but they do show that another guy, that he dreams, and when he dreams, he starts dreaming. He used to have nightmares, and now for some reason the nightmares went away, and now he starts dreaming that he's this superhero called the Sandman. And they do show him right here, and you'll, some DC fans will recognize him, but he is dressed as the regular version of the Sandman, and basically he catches crooks, and he uses a gas to knock them out. After he knocks them out and leaves them for the cops, he sprinkles like sand all over them to let the cops know that it's the Sandman. He doesn't know why he's dreaming about being this superhero and why all of a sudden. They do show that at the very end that Roger Burgess, he goes back to Dream, and he's just trying to get Dream to, like give him what he wants, and Dream still doesn't, and it goes a lot forward. Again, this book starts in like I think 1916 already. It's like 1955. And they just kind of touch base with all the different characters, which aren't too many at this point in the story. It's like the 5 people, one of them eventually dies, and it's 4. And then it's like Burgess's son. Eventually we do see that Burgess's son, eventually, that, the old assistant ran off. Well, they get a new assistant. Burgess's son eventually hooks up with the assistant. And it just kind of spans a couple different years. They do show that the son, and I think his name is Alex Burgess, and he prefers to be called that, even though some people call him Magus. But they show that he has more interaction with Sandman, and Sandman never talks to him, but he still goes down there and talks to him a lot more. And basically the kid is very negative, like, nah, you're never going to get out of here unless you give me that stuff, and blah blah blah. They do show you that he goes back and forth, and he's constantly focused on that one page that describes, who Dream is, and they show it right here in the bottom corner in his helmet gear. But eventually with old age, he eventually, and they do show it's like 70s, 80s, at the top it spans lifetime, and you could see him getting older, but it's like 70s, 80s, 90s. Oh, it's like 1972, 1978, 1982, 1988. And eventually the Alex Burgess gives the, like, I guess, the company and the estate to the assistant. As he's doing so, he goes back to, ask Dream one last time if he'll give him those powers that his father originally asked for. And casually, kind of carelessly, he messes up the circle that entraps Dream. All of a sudden they show that one of the security guards who had been taking these pills and a bunch of coffee and caffeine to stay awake, eventually he starts daydreaming and falling asleep, like while he's talking. As he's falling asleep, Morpheus is able to go into his dream and eventually, like, start controlling him and stuff like that. They do show that as this happens, that Dream falls, like, he kind of falls down dead. Everybody kind of freaks out thinking Dream is dead, and then all of a sudden, like, to double check and, to make sure that he's not dead, Alex actually unlocks the glass globe, as you can see here, that the Sandman is trapped in. As that's done, after he unlocks the thing, Sandman takes some of the sand that he pulled from that guy's dream. He pulled it from the beach, and he blows it in all the guys' faces. It puts them asleep, and basically they show the Sandman escaping in glorious fashion. He just, basically makes a portal and he leaves. They show him jumping through other dreams, which I thought was really neat, because he stops up at this other dream to eat. He actually, grabs a whole bunch of food and takes off running. They kind of show right here, and it's actually with a whole bunch of famous people. They show like John Wayne, Marilyn Monroe, and stuff like that. And then after that, then the second thing that he requires is some clothes. He's tired of being naked. So instantly he thinks and dreams up some clothes, which I thought was pretty dope. It looks like, jeans and a t-shirt with like a jacket, but as you can see, it's a pretty cool looking, like cape looking kind of jacket thing. They do show you that all the people that were affected in the world, because a lot of people were affected, not just the 5 that they've shown, but now are finally starting to wake up. They do show that this one guy who couldn't ever sleep, and we're talking about, it's his whole life basically. He finally, and he's been known as this crazy guy who mutters to himself that because he can't go to sleep, that he's finally going to sleep. They show that Onette is finally waking up, and all of a sudden, all she can think about is that she's been dreaming about a baby. Eventually, at the very end, they do now that Morpheus has finally had food, got clothes, and everybody starts, his powers are coming in attack. Guess what? He goes after Alex, and he wants revenge. Alex goes to sleep, and when he does, Morpheus quickly enters his dream. They show you what Alex is dreaming of, and he's basically like walking through the mansion and stuff, and basically he walks through this one room, and as he does, he sees a cat. The cat meows, and after that it turns into Morpheus. He instantly knows that it's Morpheus and realizes that he's escaped, but also realizes that something else is off. And Morpheus he tries to, the guy tries to plead him, telling him that it was his father's deal, that it wasn't him, that he would have released him, and blah, blah, blah. We had seen differently. When Morpheus was locked up, the guy was kind of a dick, and blah, blah, blah. And Morpheus just basically saying, I gave y'all every opportunity. He does explain that, it's been like 90 years that they had him captive, something like that. And like, the time for the endless versus humanity time moves the same. So he was locked in that cell, all quiet, for like 91 years, and he said it moved at like a snail's pace. And basically, like, after explaining that, he curses him with being forever awake, like the forever waking or whatever, the eternal waking. And they show you what that means, and it's basically like, he basically keeps having this feeling like he's waking up out of a dream, and he thinks he's like awake, and then all of a sudden he realizes he's asleep again. And it just keeps happening over and over and over and over again. And at the very end, they just show you that that they had to put him in, like, commit him to like a mental hospital or whatever, because that's like the end. That's all he's doing is waking and believing he's waking, and then but really he's like in this kind of like eternal sleep thing. He just keeps he himself thinks he's waking up, but he really hasn't. But basically, at the very end, Morpheus states that he's going to go after his tools. It was one of the questions that he had asked the guy, because there was a little bit of investigation, but the guy didn't really know a whole lot besides the fact that his tools had been stolen. So Morpheus states at the very last page that is going to be his journey going forth, is he needs to go collect his jewel, his helmet, and his sand, and he needs to make it back to his land. And that's basically where it ends off. It does show a couple advertisements for new and upcoming comics that were around at that time, New Gods and Mr. Miracle, and then we got this Gamma Rotters that looks pretty dope, that was done by TSR, who also did Dungeons and Dragons. But hey, that is my review for Sandman, Master of Dreams, issue number 1. Man, this is a dope ass read. I'm honestly thinking about grabbing the whole thing, maybe an omnibus format, even, maybe the first volume or something like that. This was exciting. I want to say the after reading this, the Netflix series to me was the same but a little better. It was like they elaborated on so much more. They did break it down for the beginner, which I can say the comic really didn't. It was like there was a lot of stuff I can see that the comic's going to add as it goes forward, but it's not a negative. Like, I did watch the whole series, so I'm pretty much caught up with, like, let's say the first 6 issues or 4 issues of the book or something like that. I don't know. But hey, that's my review on the book. I love the art, the colors, the story. Everything was gripping. It was a great read. It was a long read. It was very wordy, which I enjoyed. I hope you enjoy this review. I hope this, maybe catapults you forward to go watch the show or maybe read the book. Let me know down below if you've read this, what your thoughts. I don't know. I will say I was kind of disappointed there wasn't some other characters that they did show in the show. But that just means they're going to pop up later on in the series. But that's really the only negative thing I have to go on, is that they just, they show a lot more characters in the show than they did in the first issue. But again, first issue. Alright guys, I will let you go. Happy Labor Day. I will see you guys later. Bye!